Hello, everyone. While everyone is populating in and getting onto the into the chat, we would love to have you tell us where you're coming from today. I will say that in January we had someone from Poland, so that is the farthest we've ever had somebody who has jumped into one of our webinars. So would love to have you tell us where you're coming from today. I am in Alpharetta, Georgia. And Alan, where are you coming from today?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, so not too far away. Oh, and I
All
see we have a
right.
Kennesaw person joining us.
We have a Kennesaw person. Awesome. And yeah, so Poland so far is still the winner, which I feel like that's going to be a harder one to top for sure. But
Absolutely.
yes, but we're glad to have everybody here for sure. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. My name is Alice Fox, and I am the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. A few housekeeping items that we will be going over today. This is a 1 hour recorded webinar. If you have any technical questions, please email me at alicefox@talentconnections.net. Participants will be muted. However, as you can see, we use the chat feature and that will be on and up and going at all times. So please make sure that if you do have any questions, this is going to be very interactive. Alan has a lot of interactive slides for us and a lot of interactive information. And definitely feel free anytime you have a question. And even if we can't get to it right at the moment, we will circle back to make sure that we uh, announce or answer your question. The webinar is approved for one SHRM professional development credit, and that activity code will be given at the conclusion at our webinar. Um, Greetings. We're excited to have you in Michigan for sure. As a little information about Alan. He is the Vice President of Human Resources at Esquire Deposition Solutions, where he leads all aspects of the people function, including leadership development, learning strategy, and organizational performance. Alan holds a CPTD certification, which is Certified Professional in Talent Development, and SHRM CP certifications, and has led impactful initiatives in learning and development, employee relations, and HR strategy. Through his hands-on experience and dedication to fostering learning growth, Alan brings a unique practical perspective to empowering learning leaders. I've so enjoyed getting to know Alan through all of our prep sessions and leading up to this webinar, and excited to hear about his take on this topic for sure. So take it away, Alan, and thanks so much for your time today.
All right. Thank you so much, Alice. It's great to be here with you and with everybody else. Thank you all for joining. You have choices of where to spend what's probably your lunch hour, and I appreciate that you're choosing to spend it with us, learning about capabilities and how those can impact your company or your organization. So, a couple things that I hope you walk away with, or that I'm going to try and emphasize today, is why are capabilities important, and how do you really get started with them? Because if for an organization to be successful in the future, we really have to start thinking more about capabilities, not skills. And you may be wondering already, well, what's the difference? I mean, these are terms we hear a lot: skills, competencies, capabilities. A lot of people use these interchangeably, and in some ways they could be. I mean, the definition could be a little arbitrary, but I want to be sure that we have a baseline understanding of what we mean when we use the term capability in this session today. But before I share that definition with you, I want to get your take. So if you would drop in the chat, what is your definition of skill? What is your definition of a competency? And what's your definition of a capability? Let's see where people's thoughts are before I share with you um, how we're going to define it for our time together today.
You're making people think on their lunch, Alan.
I know, right?
Actually, homework all of a sudden right out of the gate. So
Absolutely. I told you it's going to be interactive.
you did say that for
We're gonna
sure. Yeah,
do some
everybody
things, and I've got
can.
some ideas to share a little later too.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, everybody's got to put down their sandwich and their or cup of soup and type out their answer now. So,
right? Although their hands may still be full with a sandwich. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you my how we're going to define skills, capabilities, and competencies. So, what is a skill? Very simply, it's something that you can do. I singing, for example. Yeah, thank you, Lenore. Skills or abilities for sure. It's something that you can do. Singing, for example, or creating pivot tables in Excel. These are skills. It may be something that you've been taught. It may be something that's innate to you, but that's how I would define a skill. A competency is at what level can you perform that skill? Uh, for example, singing is a skill. Are you a singing in the shower kind of competency level? Are you a high school, choral, high school chorus trained? You've had a little bit of training, or are you a professional opera singer? Those are different levels of competency. So whenever I talk about competencies today, we'll really be talking about the level of someone's skill or their capability. So that brings us to capabilities, which is the bigger picture. It is skills, it is competencies, it's tools, it's behaviors, it's everything that's that's critical to an organization's success and future needs. That's a capability. You take all those skills and you wrap the idea of why is this skill important? Why is this competency level important? That's what makes it a capability. It's the why. For example, why are Excel skills or making pivot tables in Excel useful? I mean, great. I'm glad you know how to do it, but what benefit is that offering to your organization? So when you can transform that and go, oh, I want to be able to have financial and fiscal responsibility. That's a capability at the organizational level, fiscal responsibility. To enable that capability, we're definitely going to need skills such as how to create pivot tables in Excel, processes for managing money, et cetera. Lots of skills go into those capabilities. Let me lighten this up a little bit more and or illuminate this a little bit more for you. So let's look at these three companies that we're all very familiar with. That they have all become very accomplished. They are all over the world. I used to have colleagues in the Philippines, and they had Netflix. They did not know that it was a DVD service originally, which was interesting. But anyway, Walmart, Netflix, Honda. How did they become successful? Let's start with Walmart. Walmart did not become the gigantic retail store and online platform that it is today because it had big stores or because it had low prices. Those were the outcomes. Those were not the causes of Walmart's success. So, what made Walmart successful? There were three things that I can identify that I would say were their key capabilities. There may be others, but one is very early on, they figured out logistics, specifically inventory replenishment. They came up with their own technique for managing their products called cross docking. So inbound trucks and outbound trucks were able to get products from one truck to the other and get it out to the stores very quickly with very little or no warehousing. So that helped lower costs. That reduced the amount of time that stock was missing from stores, and that helped keep the prices predictably low. So that logistics management and is a capability that Walmart heavily invested in and kept a focus on. Another key to Walmart's success was real-time information and peer-to-peer learning. They were very early on. They invested in their own private air fleet to fly managers, to fly leaders to different places for regular meetings, so that store managers could meet one another. They could share information with one another. And then, as video conferencing became available into the 80s and 90s, Walmart was one of the first to adopt it. So less expensive, but they continued to nurture that peer-to-peer learning. So many things that made Walmart stores successful came from the store managers themselves. Things were unique to certain stores. The store managers they may still, but at that specifically in the 70s and 80s when Walmart was really growing, those store managers had a good bit of flexibility over what products were in their store, and they would share with one another what's working in their store. And so that peer-to-peer learning, that real-time information sharing, was a capability that Walmart nurtured for many, many years. And then finally, to tie that together was HR. I mean, if you're going to really do peer-to-peer learning, if you're going to share this information, you've got to have the right people in place. You've got to have the right setup in place for them. So having HR as a capability engine, because we got to train people. If I remember whenever I was a kid, in going to Walmart, it was almost like going to a Chick-fil-A now. I mean, they were always very welcoming. We all know the Walmart greeter, right? So that required training. That's very much an HR capability and function. So HR became very important to Walmart's success. A little bit about Honda. If you may or may not know, it started out as a little motorcycle company, not a car company in Japan. And how did it come to dominate in the U.S.? It really was some capabilities. They figured out very quickly a different way of creating products. Instead of a very linear approach to planning, testing, execution, they did it in a much more iterative developmental way, and that allowed them to scale and move very quickly from prototype to final product for the market. Um, Honda also was very, very good and is very, very good at building scalable business processes. So as they came into the US, they needed to build out a dealer network very, very quickly. And they had that figured out. So they knew here's how to create the dealership in whatever city we go in. They had strong operating procedures. So they were able to do that first in motorcycles in Japan. And then whenever they brought that into the US, they were able to replicate that cloning capability into the car sales market and in the US. And finally, something else that Honda's always done well, especially starting from being a motorcycle company, is they really mastered how do you build lightweight, high revving, smooth running engines. Whenever Honda came into the US market, rather than trying to compete with the US automakers with, big V8s, they stuck to what they were already good at. They stuck with the capabilities that they already had. And finally, let's a little bit about Netflix real quick. One that we're probably more familiar with because it's much more recent, but wow, they went from that DVD by mail service to a major streaming service, probably the largest streaming service all over the world, and really now into a content creation powerhouse. It's just really a masterclass in capability-based transformation. They didn't switch business models whenever they went from DVD to streaming to content. They used the same capabilities. One is organizational agility and taking controlled risks. Netflix is pretty famous for a culture that's very decentralized with decision making. They sort of have a freedom and responsibility approach. So as they notice things changing and they can change with it, that's a capability that they treasure, that they build, that they continue to focus on. Another thing that makes Netflix successful and always has is data-driven content and being able to personalize the experience. So that is a key capability. If they did not have that insane level of behavioral data that they collect, then and they were not analyzing it using AI, I'm sure at this point, but also plugging in human judgment, et cetera, they would not be able to show us those unique programming suggestions that we might want to watch versus somebody else that may want to watch. So their data and data analysis is a key capability. And then finally, they built out their platforms themselves, especially their streaming service. So with all three of these companies, I think you can see these are not things that developed overnight. These were not things that they shifted from, as markets changed. These were strategic foundational capabilities that they had to build over years and years and years. And so a couple things I want you to take away from this. For capabilities to really be successful in an organization, we have to recognize they cut across functions. A capability is not owned by just that one team. I mean, logistics at Walmart, the product realization at Honda, those all required IT, operations, HR, engineering, frontline staff, all acting in very coordinated ways. It took everybody buying into these to make the organization successful. Again, I mentioned these were built over years. Long-term investment are required to really get those capabilities going. None of these companies did these things overnight. They invested in processes, training, tools, and leadership habits. Especially thinking Netflix having a creative, decentralized decision-making structure. You have to have the right people in those roles and those leadership roles to be comfortable with that. So that's a long-term investment. Another thing about capabilities, they're hard to copy. Uh, if you think about how Honda came in and really grew like wildfire in the U.S. car market, yes, there was an oil crisis going on, but the U.S. car makers could not quickly pivot and create small fuel efficient cars like Honda could. They just didn't have that capability. Um, Same with Netflix and the rise of DVD mail service and then the streaming. They ate Blockbuster's lunch, as we all know, and Blockbuster no longer exists because Netflix had that capability. Blockbuster didn't recognize it, didn't build those same capabilities. And finally, I think you'll begin to see why I'm passionate about this topic is the organizational learning aspect of this. It's learning and growth to for an organization to really have strong capabilities, they're going to have to be learning organizations. There's got to be knowledge sharing. There's got to be experimentation. We have to reward learning. It's a mindset that future focused organizations really need. So let's take just a moment. I've said a lot of words, so I'm going to pause for a sip of water and give you a question to respond to, and it's the one on the screen. Think as you were listening to me talk about Honda, Netflix, and Walmart, you may have been thinking about your own organization. What are capabilities that your organization needs to be successful in the future? Let's take about 10 or 15 seconds to jot some ideas into the chat.
I learned a lot about those three organizations. Walmart, I knew about, and Netflix, it's interesting information about how you're right. They have grown into such a powerhouse that now most of the awards shows are not really on the three regular channels. They're on one
Mm-hmm.
award, on Netflix or HBO or those types of streaming services. So
Absolutely.
very
I'm very much a movie fan. I love the Oscars awards, and I get a little prickly that Netflix has been having some major wins at the Oscars. I'm like, they're not a movie production company, but
right.
that's um yeah. Okay. So thank you, Larry. So moving quickly, agility sounds like a key capability for your organization. Um, Thinking outside the box. Thank you, Karen. Yep. Taking initiative, critical thinking. Yep. Innovation and adaptability. Thank you, Melissa and Alex. I would completely agree. I would say most organizations need those, but there are things that can make your organization unique. So as y'all keep thinking about this in the coming days and weeks, that's what you'll really want to get to is what makes my organization unique? What do we need to be successful? And I've just shown on the screen 5 core capabilities for me and my team and everyone at Esquire. These are the ones that we've identified make our organization successful or will help us continue to be successful in the future. And you probably don't know a lot about Esquire, but I'm not going to do a major sales pitch at all because that is not my role. You do not want me trying to sell anything. I want to tell you a little bit about who we are, though, and why these are important. So we sell court reporting services. So we, of course, have clients. We provide the court reporter. We provide the space to hold a deposition. We help manage exhibits. And you may be going, what's court reporting? If you've ever watched Law and Order or ever seen any courtroom show, there's that person down front with a little keyboard that doesn't have enough keys on it. That's the court reporter. And that's part of what my company does. And so we have to focus on our clients. We have to have that mindset. Results ownership. If our company is going to be successful, every single person in the company has to be thinking about our bottom line and how do we work most efficiently? How do we deliver more for our clients? But for me, the third one, digital confidence, is one of the biggest capabilities that we have. And that one and the adaptability, two of the biggest ones that we have and need. In the court reporting industry, the number of court reporters is diminishing quickly. They're retiring, and not many people are going into court reporting anymore. But the need for court reporters is increasing. Oh my gosh, astronomically. So we have to fill that gap, and one way to do that is with digital court reporters. Um, so digital court reporters can deliver almost the same thing that a stenographic court reporter does, but they capture it using specialized computer equipment, et cetera. So we've got to have people that are confident with digital tools. And of course, now with the inclusion of AI, that's definitely impacting our industry as well. So that adaptability and digital confidence kind of go hand in hand at Esquire, because we have to continually be shifting how are we going to capture the record? How are we going to deliver for our clients? But also, how are we doing it with technology and these new capabilities and new tools that are available to us? So, how can capabilities really help you across your organization? That's the great thing. Once you get these defined as what works for you and your what makes your company or your organization successful, it can impact every part of the employee life cycle. I can talk a little bit about how we're beginning to implement these across it and at Esquire. One, with talent acquisition, whenever you're doing job postings, we're moving away from traditional job postings with here are your duties and responsibilities to here are the five major capabilities that we need at Esquire. How good are you at these? This is what we're looking for in the people that would be successful at Esquire and that will help us be successful. So we're able to pull these into our talent acquisition process. As we're doing succession planning now, we're looking at folks and going, okay, what are their strengths and weaknesses in each of these capabilities? How could we support them and growing in some of these capability areas? What skills do they need to be better in a certain capability area? Skills are important, but they aren't the sole focus here. And then you can zoom out from the individual level and doing succession planning and thinking about promotions and placing individuals to looking at your total workforce. Um, as we start thinking about growing into the future, we're probably going to need to lean in more and more to that digital confidence capability at Esquire, so we can see how are our employees doing it. We've got this in our performance reviews now, so we're using our capabilities and part of our performance reviews, so we can see at a large level. For example, maybe we see that the sales team is really great at client-centric mindset as an overall group, but maybe not as strong on one of the other ones. So we can think about our workforce planning, think about training and learning initiatives. Where might we need to add additional people and target different things? And as you're already hearing me say, the learning and development aspect here is so very critical and just is a natural extension of capabilities. We're even moving and using our capabilities, just the way that we talk around our organization. I'm sure you all offer do like quarterly rewards or something to recognize, great performance. We've centered our quarterly spotlight awards around our capabilities. It's nominated by peers, and they're given out based on peers seeing folks demonstrating our capabilities. So it's really capabilities can really be leveraged in many ways. So at this point, you may be wondering or saying to yourself, "This is great. Love it, Alan, but how do I do this?" So let's dive in. Give you an anatomy lesson for a capability framework. So what's involved here? One, you can see in the red box, you're going to have your capabilities. You're going to just describe what they are. Pretty simple. So these 6 capabilities are specifically written for a manager of learning and design. These are the 6 capabilities I would expect someone in that role to have. Notice my shift here. For most of this time, we've been talking about capabilities at the organizational level, our big 5 at Esquire. But you can also drill down to specific teams or specific roles and think about what capabilities are needed to be successful there. So these are the 6 that might be useful for a L&D manager. You describe them. Then you break out what are your competency levels. We decided to go with 5 levels. at Esquire. And then once you know what your levels are, then you define what does good work look like in each one of those capabilities at all of your competency levels. So you can see for strategic planning, we've defined what foundational, intermediate, developed, advanced, and exemplary performance looks like. This can become a lot. I will admit, which is why I would encourage you, if you go down this road, to keep it simple. Maybe even just focus on your organizational capabilities to begin with. And then finally, you'll see some of these are highlighted in purple. Since I'm specifically thinking about these capabilities for a particular role, I then decide what is the appropriate competency level for that role. So you can see on strategic planning, an L&D manager would probably be at the advanced level. For program design, they should likely be at the developed level. So Karen, I see a great question there. Is this done for every position? I'll be honest, we did, and oh my goodness, it almost killed me. It is a lot. That's why I would encourage you to think strategically, start small. If you can identify those 5 organizational capabilities first, because those are going to be the critical ones, you can then do the competency leveling for every role. But then you only have 5 capabilities to worry about rather than 200 capabilities with 5 different levels. So keep it simple. And then as you expand out, think about what are your most critical roles that you would want to define capabilities for, and start with 1 or 2. For example, at Esquire, a category of employee that didn't exist 5 years ago are our digital court reporters. We went from 0 to 250 of them in the past 3-4 years. So that was a critical role to define the capabilities and the appropriate competency levels. So how do we really get started? Where can we do this? There are multiple starting points. I'm sort of zeroing in at the position level here, but you could think back at the organizational level. If you're thinking organizational capabilities, I'd be looking at strategic plans. What are your long-term goals? Talking with your senior team. That takes a lot of collaboration and planning processes that you would be probably uniquely qualified to do, and working with your own team. But if you're thinking about the position level, the hidden treasure chest are your job descriptions. So here's one, manager of training and development, because I'm a bit of a training person. Take just a moment, look in here, see what are some words and phrases that might lend themselves to defining the capabilities for a manager of learning and development. As you think about those, drop them in the chat there if you would like. One thing as you're thinking and writing, one thing I'll point out is, oh, thank you, Melissa. Yeah, program development. That's, as you read through this job description, you're going to see, yeah, they're going to be developing programs. They're going. Also, another one that you see is this job summary mentions company-wide needs, which is interesting. We're doing annual training reports. There was something in here about meeting with coaches and managers. So I'm getting cross-functional collaboration. So kind of like our inclusive collaboration capability at Esquire, I would see something like that as important for a manager learning and development. Karen, got it. Yes. Evaluation and assessment. Those would be important capabilities. So you can start picking these things out. As you do this, though, some things some ideas I want to give you as you look at job descriptions. Look for outcomes, not the actions. You sort of want to ignore the verbs. It's not so much what the person is doing; it's what are they producing. What is the overall solution that they are going to offer? And then, as I was just describing the behavioral expectations, as I was picking out the cross-functional collaboration aspect in that job description, you start piecing together the dots, connecting the dots. And then, of course, strip out the fluff there. Something like being a strong communicator. Okay, that's great, but that's not very strategic. That may be a nice skill, but what capability are we enabling by being a strong communicator? So in the interest of time, I'm probably not going to have you take another look at this. But I do want to share some tools that are out there for you that you can use to help get started and make this a little more streamlined. Now, one thing I'll point out is that all three things I'm about to share with you say skills. Again, our focus is capabilities. These are a starting point. They're not going to design the capabilities for you from scratch because, again, they're looking at skills. You'll have to kind of take that and advance it a little bit yourself to really take the skills that are identified and move into capabilities. So, AI is here and if you're loving it, yay, I definitely am. If you're a little reluctant, that's okay too. But there are tools in ChatGPT, for example. If you come into their Explore GPTs tab in ChatGPT, and of course it's going to, there we go, thankfully. You can search and add other functionality into your ChatGPT. And there is one called Skills GPT, which is really pretty cool. So you can give it a prompt. For example, I'm just going to do it live right now. Let's see. Let's do an HR manager. So define 5 capabilities needed by an HR manager. I'm going to zoom in so y'all can actually read that. Is that better? Define 5 capabilities needed by an HR manager, include 5 competency levels of performance. Define the capabilities. Let's see what it's going to come up with. I toyed with this yesterday. Yeah, let's see. Good. It's doing exactly what I was hoping it would do. So thinking about a manager of human resources, what is it? What do they need to be able to do? Talent acquisition, employee relations and engagement, performance management, compliance and policy management, strategic decision making. It's defined each of those for us. And as you can see, it's telling us what good performance would look like at all 5 levels for all 5 of those capabilities. You could then take that and tweak it however you would like. You could also do the opposite. Instead of thinking of a role, you could think of a capability. For example, change management. Define change management. Include a definition. We already have that. Include 5 competency levels. Let's see what it comes up with here. So it's defining change management for us and gives us what would good performance look like in change management at those 5 different levels. So as we were building out our capability, our 5 core ones at Esquire: client-centric mindset, inclusive collaboration, et cetera. This would be one way to help kind of define those. Once you sort of know what ballpark you want to play in, what is the capability I'm thinking about, AI can help you very quickly with to build some of those. And then a couple of other tools, if you are familiar, or you may not be familiar, I was not until a couple of years ago. ONET, it's a site created by the U.S. Department of Labor, if I remember correctly, and they define what every job looks like and everything you might want to know about that job, and they keep it up to date. So you could search by job. Let's do, let me think for a second. Recruiting manager. Let's see if we have anything for recruiting. Nope. Talent acquisition, talent director. Okay. Let's see what comes up. Just want to show you an example. So they really define the job. I mean, what they might need, what type of work do they do, what skills are needed. So you can see a talent director needs 14 different technology skills, and you can dive into these. So ONET could be a good source beyond just your job descriptions to really start pulling out what are the skills for this role so that I can begin thinking of those capabilities that might be needed as well. So everything you might want to know about this role is defined. So there's a lot of good information that can help you with your capability creation. And then looking at the details tab here. Some of this is repetitive from the first one, but you'll find some other interesting stuff here too. And then the final site, and by the way, I'll drop this in the chat just so you can copy and paste it as well. Let's see, here we go. Um, this is the link for ONET. Once I take off the specific part to the talent director, there's the general ONET link if you would like to save that and return to the website on your whenever you have a chance. And then the final website I'll share is the SFIA, which is a global organization that's really focused on technology skill development, but they have created a framework of skills that you can use in the same capacity. So this kind of we'll navigate around just a little bit. Actually, but let me get that link for you as well, real quick. Um, there we go. There you go. Um, so you can look at all the different skills. I'm trying to remember how to get back to where I was yesterday. So, oh, the skills A to Z. Let's zoom in on a little bit so we can read some of that. Um, so accessibility and inclusion. Let's take a click into that one, and you can see specifically they define what is accessibility and inclusion, and they give you, depending on the skill, up to 7 different levels of good performance in that realm, which is in my mind really pretty cool. Um, so yeah, that's sort of 3 different resources that can get you going with capability building and development. So let's check in. I'll take a minute to pause because again I've said a whole lot of words, and take a look at the 3 questions on the screen. Just want to get you thinking, and so I'd love to get your thoughts. So just pick one of the questions, drop your idea and your response to it into the chat, please.
While we're waiting for that, those are great websites, especially, those who build job descriptions and need to have extra resources. And as we move more to the skills and just not, like you said, not and not just doing the regular, trying to get to the meat of what you really need, the capability that you need instead of just the general job framework. So I really love that. And we'll be able to use that on a daily basis for sure. So
Awesome. That's the goal. That is definitely the goal.
yeah, for sure. So, um,
Yes. Yeah, great question there, Larry. I'm assuming that's answering the kind of the answer to the first question. What's the hardest part of doing this is, yes, how do we get the business to understand this is an HR exercise? Not just an HR exercise, but really adding value and meaning. I'll tell you sort of how I did it. Part of that was before I attempted this, because it was my idea to bring this to Esquire. I got senior leadership buy-in. I looked for the key people. I knew that my chief operating officer was going to be probably the most important person to buy into this, because 80% of our employees report into her organization. So I began the conversation at the senior level and talked with Liz first and was like, hey, here, I think we need to do something different with our performance reviews. And oh, look at all these other things that it could do for us. Here's how it might work. Here's how it would benefit the operations organization. Here's how it's going to help Esquire be successful long term. So I started those conversations. It was a bit of a slow burn intentionally because again, I needed to get their buy-in over time, so that we could do this. And then at every turn there was communication, buy-in. They were engaged in creating the capabilities and the competency levels for each of the positions in their departments. They reviewed and signed off on, yes, these are the right capabilities. Yes, these are the relevant competency levels. And then I asked the senior leaders because it's a lot of work, and often the person at the very top is not as dialed in to the very specifics of the frontline roles, which makes sense. So as it was appropriate, they were engaging with their direct reports and leaders further down into the organization. So those folks were sort of like we're spreading the roots out across the company. So they were the managers and leaders were getting engaged early in the process and throughout the process as we defined these. And then as we really rolled out our framework, a lot of communication was important to get all the employees to understand it. Because I sort of started this as yes, we're going to do this capability framework. It's going to be great for the company, but I started it as a shift in our performance management process. And so that was a conversation that we had to make sure all of our employees understood was how is this different from what we've done in the past? How does it work? How will it benefit them? And I did for example, a 6-week email drip campaign, helping them understand what I just shared with you all. What are capabilities? How can they benefit the organization? How can they inform your work? How do they? So that was twice a week, so about 12 emails over the course of 6 weeks, short bite-sized things. I put additional information into our learning management system, after each email went out. So there was always that call to action in the email, so that folks could go learn more. And so things were in the LMS, and it kept them curious. It was helping bring them along that change curve, because you got to win the hearts and the minds, not just force the behavior change. You got to get the hearts and minds as well. So that was kind of how I did it, so that it was not just an HR exercise. And I won't say we did it perfectly. I won't say that it's changing everything and it's a panacea. I don't think those exist, but it's definitely making a difference at Esquire. All right. And with that, oh, let me click over there. I'm really beginning to wrap up. Were there any other questions, comments, thoughts from anyone? All right. Well, you are welcome to reach out after the webinar if you'd like. I am on LinkedIn. There's my address there, and there's my email address as well. If you have questions or want to bounce ideas of if you do go down this pathway and want to bounce ideas off someone, feel free to reach out. And with that, Alice, I will pass it back over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Alan. And I'm sure as I'm speaking to still, if you have any questions that you want to jump into, thanks, Karen, for that feedback for sure. For
Mhm.
Alan, yeah, it was great and a lot of great information and tools that we can use and thought the things how we can change our mindset of how we do a lot of things. So I appreciate that for sure. So thank you everyone for joining us today for our Wednesday webinar series. A little information about who we are. Talent Connections is a human resources executive search and consulting firm located in Atlanta. We were founded in 1999, and we've spent over 2 decades perfecting our craft in HR services while creating thousands of transformative connections. You can find out more about us at www.talentconnections.net. Also, our sister company, Career Spa, provides career transition and coaching services tailored to each individual, helping you discover your career path and secure an advantage in this evolving job market, which that is the truth. It is evolving at all times. So the website for that is www.careerspa.net for more information there as well. The activity code for this webinar that has been approved for professional development credit for recertification through SHRM is 26-VFQVK. So make sure you write that down and note the activity ID number on your recertification application form. And remember to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will be Wednesday, May the 13th. And Caitlin Dessel will be presenting Say Hard Things, Build Strong Teams. She actually is a presenter at the SHRM SOAR conference. So it was last year, and I believe she will be this year as well. So we're excited to have her join us on our webinar to be able to dig into this topic for sure. As a reminder, our webinars are recorded. It will be up on our Talent Connections website. You can go to our webinars and you will be able to click on this to refresh your mind or as to get any information that Alan talked about for sure. So uh, yes, it is recorded for sure, and you will be able to see it on our website. As I said, go to talentconnections.net, and we have a whole section on all of our previous webinars on there. So thank you for joining everyone today. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. And Alan, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And everybody have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.